What I'd like to do now is run through a complete visit so you can see how all the components, features, and functions integrate into a testing. If this is your first time in, we simply click the New button, click the last name, type in the last name, hit your Tab button, type in first name, and in this case I'm going to skip all the demographics, just go right to gender, press the letter M for male, and what's your date of birth?
January 1st, 1970.
Once I've got the required data in, I simply click the Save button, and then I'm going to select which tests I want. We always run the comprehensive and maybe 2 or 3 subtests. In this case, we're going to run an allergy sensitivity profile and the miasm influence, and then I'm going to look at my filter options, make sure they're set where I want them. I do want to test the baseline to look at the values on the organs and systems, and also measure how they respond to the remedies that we find. Once I've got all those identified, I simply click on the Start Test button. Then I put one electrode in one hand, one electrode in the other, and you can see it's calibrating for this patient. Once it's calibrating, now we're going through and we're looking at the energetic status of the various aspects of his body. And the patient will be able to read what we're going through. And then we'll review this all at the end. I don't try to review it right here because it's going so fast to keep up with it is near impossible. But what's nice is the patients are drawn into the testing parameters with the graphics that you see. Once we go through the baseline, we're now testing this filter list, and you can see it moving down the list. All these tests are pass-fail. If you pass the test, it moves to the next test. If you fail the test, it loads up all the remedies associated with that test. They're sent into the body, and through a process of elimination, their body picks what it wants to heal itself. That's one of the unique things about this system. It doesn't see gender, it doesn't see age, it doesn't see race, it doesn't see nationality. It just sees one biological entity's response to these signatures. And you'll notice in the hold tank, it'll show you the test that they failed and the remedy to correct it. And you can see we've gone through about 50 of the 75 available tests in the comprehensive. And once we're finished with the comprehensive, we'll then look at the inherited predisposition and some of the allergy patterns. And if the test fails, for instance, if we fail the neurological test, it would load up all the neurotransmitters. If they fail the hormone test, it loads up all the hormones so we can see which one is the issue and give us very detailed information as a clinician to what's going on and what we need to do to keep them healthy. Now we're nearing the end of the comprehensive analysis, and it's looking at allergens now. And you can see this is a 1-by-1 test. It's going through different categories to see where some of the main allergens are occurring. And now we're going through the phenolics. These are the smallest chemicals in any organic substance. Often neutralizing one phenolic can neutralize up to 80 foods or numerous plants or animal danders. And so you can see what we have done is went through all those tests, and if we look now at the baseline, you'll see his hypothalamus gland was an issue, and then I can ask him questions on the hypothalamus gland, whether he has any digestive problems, or there's sleep problems. So if I ask him and he has sleep problems, I would simply highlight that area, right-click, copy it to my notes. I would also read through the description, and if he has any of these symptoms, I would right-click on those, copy it to my notes. I would then go to the next area, we're looking at the reproductive organs, and repeat the same process to gather detailed information about this individual. If I look at the small intestine, he may have just physical discomfort in that area. I would highlight it, right-click, copy it to my notes, and do the same process so I can gather details about him. What I would then do is if you see these systems that had problems, these two responded. The hypothalamus only partially responded. So my next step is going to be to find a remedy just for the hypothalamus. So I'll go back to my Filters tab. I'll click on my Filters button and type in baseline. Then I'm going to click Search, and it'll pull up all the areas that we looked on the baseline. And in this case, we just want to test the hypothalamus. That was the only one that didn't respond to the remedies. So we'll click Scan. Mike's still holding the electrodes. It's going to load up all the remedies for the hypothalamus and say, aha, here's the best remedy for the hypothalamus. And then we're just going to take a look at that remedy. And it's a SAR code in this case, which is an optimum blueprint of how the gland should function. And I'll go over these in a little more detail as we review this. Then if I've talked to the patient before and they have any specific symptoms, in this case, Mike talked about having migraines, so we'll type in migraine. And we'll search the entire database for every product that can address the migraine issue. We'll then click Scan. It will recalibrate. It will load every single one of those items. We'll send those into his body, and his body will pick what it wants to heal itself. And so you can see for migraine, this was the remedy, and it'll give us the description. Once I've gathered all the symptoms, done my filter testing, and done any advanced testing, for instance, if I want to look at specific pathogens and see what's going on, once I'm completely done, I would then go over and click on each of these balancing items and ask them what they have in relation to symptoms. And see, carcinocinium is very interesting. Its description is an inherited predisposition to multiple allergies. They're usually food, but it can occasionally be airborne. So it looks like his allergy pattern is coming from an inherited predisposition. So the homeopathic will strengthen his body in that area so that this pattern starts to disappear. And as I go through these areas, I can also go in and highlight the foods or the symptoms that he has a specific issue with, copy those to notes, and once I've gathered all the symptoms that he's familiar with, I would then press Control-N to bring up my notepad, and I would go through the symptoms, and I may type in twice a day, once a week. Ask them specific questions so I get more details on how frequently the symptoms are occurring. Because one of the differences between a good technician and a great technician, a good technician can run the equipment. A great technician will gather all the symptoms so that when the patient comes back in 3 weeks, I can go through that list and we should see almost all those symptoms are either greatly reduced or completely gone. Because the process is so natural and oftentimes so slow, they'll get better and they may not even know it. I see this several times in a clinic where I'll bring up my notes and it'll say, you were having problems sleeping 5 of the 7 nights. And they'll go, I don't remember having problems sleeping. I'll go, that one's gone. You were experiencing gas twice a day, usually on an average of 3 days a week. And they'll be like, I don't have any digestive problem. Okay, that one's gone. That's the advantages to a great technician versus a good technician. Then to finish the process, I would then go down and click on Test Plate. If he has any items that he's currently taking, I would put them on the test plate and test to see what effect they're having on his body and then know what to do with them at that point. Once I finish that, I would click on Imprint and I would take an existing homeopathic. In this case, this is one that I've made up with 20% alcohol by volume and water. I would put on the test plate, click Start, and it takes about 45 seconds. And the items in green, the balancing signatures, are put in multiple times. In 45 seconds, those signatures are going in over 3 million times. And it's storing that information in between the carbon bonds of the alcohol, the minerals, and the water. And we've done a study with this with Bruno Fraser at the physics department at the University of Utah, where we took 20 bottles, randomly labeled them, imprinted 10 of them, and did nothing to the other 10, gave them to the physics department and said, can you tell us the difference? And they were able to sort them in the 2 categories. And once we told them that we were transferring electromagnetic signatures into the liquid medium, he explained to us the process of how that actually occurs with the carbon bonds. And once the transfer is complete, I would then get a label, and you could see his dosage is 7 drops. On the label, I'd write 7 drops, morning and night, for 3 weeks. At the end of 3 weeks, if there's anything left, throw it out. It's done its job. It's specifically designed to correct this process, move you from point A to point B. Once you're at point B, this remedy is no longer valid. Your body will pick what it needs next to move from point B to point C. It can take anywhere from 2 to 12 visits to fully restore health. Again, it's not 100%, but the success rate is anywhere between 85 to 97%. We have some of the best success with chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia, lupus, any type of allergy disorder or autoimmune disorders. I can also, if I want to use the laser, put the laser on the test plate, click on the button for laser, click Start, and if I've stored any signatures on there, you can see that it's erasing those signatures, and now it's encoding it or imprinting, transferring the signatures of the electromagnetic patterns into the laser. I would then take the laser, and the laser has a horizontal line. I would back far enough away from the patient. I would start from the head, go down to the toes, back up to the head, and I'd repeat this process 3 times. Then I'd have them slightly turn their head, and I'd go over the ear points, 1, 2, 3, and I would do the same thing with the opposite ear. On the ear points are all the acupuncture meridians or energy meridians to all the organs and glands in the system. And then to make sure the treatment worked, I would click this button that says Laser Effectiveness. The patient's still holding the electrodes, and it will go in and tell me whether the laser treatment was effective or I need to redo the laser. So in this case, it says the transfer was successful. I'd send him home with his homeopathic and any nutritional items that came up. I would also add those to his regime, reschedule him in 3 weeks before he came back. I'd then take the electrodes, and I would go into my print options, select the options that I desire, click print, give them a hard copy, or email it, or both. And this is the process, and you can see how fast it is, and yet how comprehensive it is.